We appreciate everybody joining. Today's topic, we'll walk through a little bit. Feel free to ask questions along the way in the chat window or on the Q&A session, and we'll get to them as we can. If we don't get to them during the session, we'll get to them after. But we want to make sure that this is, if you have any questions, we can answer them. So we'll walk through that. So the chat window is at the bottom of the session. It's either chat or the Q&A. Either one of those, we'll monitor those and cover any questions. So the topic today we're going to walk through is this soft signage opportunity, and then a little deep dive into some kind of new and interesting things in the market, and then an overview of the EFI portfolio with a very interesting demonstration on some new fabric. Printing on some new fabric. So that's the presentation for today. I see a couple more people joining. So let me give one more minute. 11:02. All right. Well, yeah, we'll go ahead and get started on this now. So I want to introduce a couple of folks as we go through. Ken Bach from Aberdeen Fabrics will be covering the some new and interesting topics in the market itself. And then we've got our EFI group with Tomer and Tiffany to walk through the product and the demonstration of the product to actually see from our snowy Manchester demo center, is what I understand. So no snow inside, but we'll keep going. So again, we are being recorded, so everybody that's on, so just so everybody's aware, and we'll send out that recording to any of your colleagues if they've missed this session, or to those of attendants, if you want to review anything again. Feel free to ask questions along the way. As I said, the agenda topic, I think we're pretty excited about it because it's really the soft signage opportunity and where we are in the market, and some of the things we're going to talk about today are they're interesting. They're new and different. So as we come out of COVID, what we're seeing and hearing from customers are excitement about new opportunities. Some of them were things that were around for a long time when it comes to soft signage, but there's a whole bunch of new opportunities and new business opportunities for our customers based on what their customers want, based on new materials, based on new print capabilities. There's just a lot of innovation in this particular area, and really our customers are asking for it. Our print providers are being very creative in how they can actually provide solutions to the market. And then the suppliers are actually coming through and with, again, new and interesting materials, substrates, and what we've got on print capabilities. All this adds up to a very lucrative and growing business. So we want to walk through a little bit of that from there, and then we'll go through. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Ken, I'm going to switch it over to you because I think we're going to start with your presentation. So I'll make you the presenter.
I'm going first.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, have you shared the screen? Because I cannot.
Nope, I'm about to do that.
Okay.
Let me add my presentation here. And view presenter. And you are now presenter. Passing privileges.
My screen.
Yep.
All right, PowerPoint. There we go. Does everyone see it?
Yep, it is coming up right now. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. I'm going to take a few minutes here to talk about opportunities in our industry. First, let me just discuss some trends. Back in the year 2000, less than 5% of trade shows were using fabric, and they were the main point of where you would actually put fabric into. The rest of the industry hasn't even learned about printed graphic fabric yet. The one thing I learned back in college is when a new technology is introduced, it takes about 20 years to really take hold and about another 5 years to replace it. Now, if you look at trade shows today, 65, 75%, 85% of trade shows are all fabric. You very seldom see many other materials. And that's starting to happen in other industries. In 2022 now, about 30% of retail displays are not using fabric. And there's reasons for it. It's easy to put up, it's greener, it's basically looks nicer, it's richer, And it really, that trend started heavily when direct started coming into play. So it was easy for print shops to take on this industry.
Hey, Ken, one thing, can you put your slides in the slideshow mode? We're seeing just the
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah.
You're right about that from beginning. Okay. All right. Does that look good, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Great. Sorry about that. Okay. Now, the other thing that's also kind of kept pace with the needs of the industry is fabrics come a long way. Back in 2006, most fabrics are heavy, non-stretchy, and it was transfer only. Now you have lightweight fabrics, more opaque. They meet the demand of the market. As we look at new industries to take on fabric, we need to adapt that fabric to make it work for the industry in an easy fashion. Why use fabric? It's cheaper to ship, cheaper to install, it's reusable, it's environmentally friendly. Benefits to the store clerk because they're installing it. When I go visit malls, for example, I'll ask who's installing this display. Oh, we do it. It takes 5 minutes. Unlike in the past, where you needed a professional team to come in. Imagination is your limit for the design. Fabric is very malleable. You can wrap it around structures. You can shape it, design it. It's a richer appearance. Fabric can be washed and ironed, reusable, much more so than other substrates. Now, markets. I'm going to start off just talking about trade shows, which is
one thing about that last comment.
Sure.
Go back to that slide just for a minute. I think this is a key piece is what we're really seeing is both the customers and the providers. These are benefits for everybody, right? So
Exactly.
and that's really why is fabric coming around and why is it bigger than it was before? All of these things mean more now than they did even pre-COVID, I believe, is what we're hearing.
Actually, one other thing I wanted to emphasize about shipping, when you're trying to ship a graphic display, quite often it has to be rolled in a long tube or put into a flat box. Fabric can be put into a small FedEx box and shipped to any location quickly and inexpensively. So, I mean, there's many, many different reasons why fabric has taken hold. But, today with the shipping costs, that's one big one.
Yeah, and labor is the next one too, right? So that you have anybody can put it in a box. You don't have to do anything special. The installation being done either by the provider or even the end customer. That's possible now. I don't have to wait on special installers, right? Which may not be around anymore.
Exactly. That as the point I was making, about the store clerks. They don't need tools. They can put up. I mean, I'll give. It's not in this presentation, but I have a slide emphasizing that where in an environment it took 3 people to install a light box using the old film type displays. It took one guy less than 10 minutes to put up a backlit display in a light box.
Yeah.
Again, simple. Now, markets. Folks, again, they see fabric, they think the opportunity is limited. The opportunity for fabric is vast. It's very large. And you're going to see that very shortly in some of the images I'm going to show. Trade shows, of course, you can see from these different shapes and designs, it's really just allowed the trade show booths to look a lot more interesting and much easier to put up and take down. That one that has Abaddon on the left-hand side. In the past, it would have taken a whole crew, probably a good 2-3 days to manufacture that booth and put it up. Now, 2-3 people can put up a booth like that literally in hours. Events. Now, events come in all shapes and sizes. You have events on stage. You have like the top corner, a political debate, or the bottom corner, the typical event or concert. These also happen to be the most profitable, or the highest margin, I should say. Because, the event customers I have will tell you right off, they can charge a premium because it's not price of what their customers are concerned about. It's being on time and making last minute adjustments to the event. Just imagine a band coming in and the backup band is replaced a week before the concert. Well, they need to be able to rely on that print shop to make that adjustment, and they're charging literally premiums for this. So events are extremely profitable. Now, retail. Retail again comes in many shapes and sizes. You can see the typical stores on the left side. The one on top might be Target. The one on the bottom is Home Depot, both in backlit and frontlit. But then again, you also have shapes like the little Mario head. They were going to do this in vinyl, and the company came along and showed them how quick and easy it was to install. It literally took the installer less than 2 minutes to put that Mario head on, where a vinyl adhesive would have taken about an hour. You can also have different design, like on the right-hand side. where you have almost like a translucent image in front of a mannequin or behind a mannequin. And then on the bottom, gas stations. Again, you may not notice it, but fabric is now wrapping the pumps. You can wrap anything with fabric to actually hide some unattractive element of your store or your gas station, as an example. Now, backlit. Backlit is huge, and in the past, I come from the old photographic industry. Backlit had to be done on film, and again, it's expensive, it's difficult to put on. But backlit, and again, I can answer these questions later. But you have backlights being used in different purposes. If you're at an airport, using a different type of material for that backlit because it's not as important to be sharp and to be precise. But then if again, in a store environment where the product is more important than just the image, using a different type of backlit. Again, I won't go into details now, but basically, as you can see, backlit is used in airports, in retail environments, in displays, in museums, you name it. Now I'm going to take you off on a little bit more diverse direction. You don't think about weddings. Wedding photographers are now seeing the benefit of using dye sub or fabric. You can use it as a floor runner. You can decorate tables, customize. I can tell you this from being an old wedding photographer in the 80s. People will pay anything for something unique for their wedding. Now, I included funerals in this, and I didn't mean to tie those two together because obviously you get married and eventually you do die, right? But at the end, funeral caskets have always had, or funerals have always had some image of the deceased in some fashion. Now folks are being more creative. They're putting it into the casket or on top of the casket as a throw. Again, these could be higher margin items because folks do not kind of try to nickel and dime when it's coming to their wedding or their funeral, for example. Restaurants. Restaurants could have customized table throws that match the type of cuisine they're selling. You can see on the left-hand corner, that's a Japanese restaurant. Again, fabric is ideal. It's also washable and it's more sterile because basically you put up a display, it gets splashed with food or whatever is coming onto it. Quite often that's damaged. Now they can take that and if they wanted to throw it into a washer and come back with it. It can also allows restaurants to be more creative, like you see on the left-hand side on the bottom. They can let it flow into their restaurant. Hide some very ugly structures very cheaply instead of putting up a whole new ceiling, for example. Real estate. Real estate agents are also learning fabric is very beneficial. Flags goes without saying. Flags have been used all through the market, in different markets, I should say. But it gets attention to what they're trying to sell. Definitely table throws or signage. Now, you don't think of casinos using dye sublimation fabric, but they've been doing this for years. Back prior to dye sublimation coming into the forefront in the early 2000s, these tables were printed and they were much more difficult to change out. Now they're changing these tables out about every 3 months because they get stained. They want to change the advertising. Basically, casino tables are almost all now dye sub fabric. It's a felt type fabric. Now, I'll go on this topic for a second. Soundproofing and acoustical solutions. Some office buildings, some restaurants are learning that they can actually reduce the ambient sound in a room or actually make it more acoustical based on using fabric. Fabric does not restrict sound, but it allows it to be absorbed into a material behind it. For this example is this display behind that was a sound absorbing material, which you can buy at Home Depot very cheaply. You put that into the back of your SCG frame. Now you absorb that sound and make the environment much more pleasurable to be in. As restaurants, as offices learn this. Actually, my wife worked for a company. We did that in her office, and it reduced the sound of their call center substantially. So again, it's another advantage of fabric which you cannot do with vinyl or hard substrates. Hanging signs. Again, you go to a trade show. In the past, a hanging sign was much more difficult to put up. It was heavy. It was rigid. It was very expensive. Now, these signs are feather light. They can be put up with one cable, as you see on the left. They can be shaped in any size and structure, like the baseball cap you see on the left-hand side on the bottom. I don't think we could have done this in the past if it wasn't for fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Now, photographers, both in studio environments, kids photography, concerts, when they're doing interviews at the Academy Awards, these step and repeat type backdrops, easy to put up for a photographer. They don't have any glare, so you don't have to worry about the flash reflecting back on it. Big in that environment. If you go to LA, almost all the print shops down there are using fabric for their step and repeat and backdrops. Pole banners. Now this one's an interesting one because in the States, and this is in Canada actually, in the States you still see vinyl on most pole banners. Some disadvantages of doing it in that fashion. One, they get torn down because the wind will go right at them. There's no pass through of air, which you do in fabric. Fabric can actually have a flow to it, like you see on the left-hand side where the bottom piece of that display is flowing. And now in certain cities that are starting to ban substrates that are more toxic to the environment, like vinyl and solvents. Fabric, for example, in Canada, it's mandated they have to use fabric. So if you go up to Western Canada, this is what you will see. Again, it's going to come down to the States, I think, in the next couple of years, and it already has in some places. Now, you don't think of wall coverings to be used in fabric. This happens to be Stanford University. That looks like a wallpaper. But what's nice about it, there's no seams. It's one continuous piece. It's put up as an SEG frame. You can do this in offices. You can do this in homes. You can do this in any environment that wants a wall covering. And think of the advantage of it. You get tired of this covering, you can take it down. As Dan said a few minutes ago, within a couple of minutes, a non-trained installer can put up a whole new display. Or they can wash the old display if it got dirty, or they want to. Well, I'm going to take it a step further. You look at a hospital environment. We need to be, anti-germ, for example. You have a room with fabric on the walls. You can take it down and wash it, clean it, put it back up. Be much more sterile than using the typical type of wall coverings you do today. But again, this can be even framed to go around the light cover. The light switches and the electrical outlets. Movie theaters, both in the theaters and in movies themselves, are using fabric. Quick setup, quick tear down, much easier for the crew to put up. Now, you don't think of churches using fabric. Now, the one on the bottom is a much more elaborate setup. But again, it's all pure fabric. But on the top, a lot of pop-up churches. I don't want to call them temporary churches. Set up in schools on a Sunday morning, or set up in a hall. Fabric is huge for them because they need to be able to set up their backdrop, set up their Easter display or the Christmas display, and take it down by the end of the service, so they can move on to the following week. Now, in architectural design, what's interesting is if you look at the image on the top, one is actually wood, one is actually fabric, and it's hard to distinguish. So, architects, as they're designing new buildings and looking for ways to reduce weight and price, they're using fabric to be creative. They're using fabric to actually give the image that they want to portray without actually putting in the costly materials. Of course, flags. Flags kind of started this trend. Way back in the early 2000s, you saw flags becoming popular around the United States. Actually, it started from a gentleman out of South Africa. They were using these type of flags in South Africa. He came to the States and then realized that we didn't use it at all here. So he brought it over, and then it was copied. Travel. You probably don't notice it. You go to an airport, like on the airport on the left-hand side, Mines. That's Denver's International Airport. There's fabric everywhere you look. Chicago O'Hare. Both backlit, frontlit. Even the airlines themselves are using the fabric displays for their own signage. Excuse me. Now, sporting events. I'm going to take a second here on these various images because I'm going to show the scope of the opportunity. The bottom image of that whole stadium. A couple of years ago during the championship game, 10,000 yards of raw fabric was used on one stadium for the college championship game. It's wrapping stadiums. It's literally using the signage around the stadium. It's on the field. Again, easy to put up, easy to dispose of. You can't speak enough about why they've gone that way. I mean, it's just taking it over. The Blue Shark one. Now, folks, again, don't think about this, the opportunity for kids soccer and baseball and basketball games. If you have kids, behind every bench, there's a banner. And they have to get that banner printed. And it's much easier to put up a fabric banner you can throw in the back of your car and then wash it on the weekend in between games as it gets dirty or wet during a competition. Well, there's a gentleman that started just marketing it to clubs a couple of years ago, and he was doing $1 million in these 8x10 banners within a year. On the top right-hand corner, you see that chair where it says Perth. Well, that's a company out of Australia. Actually, I believe they're one of your customers at EFI.
Yeah. Yeah.
They basically got the opportunity because these stadiums are multifaceted. You have a soccer game one week, you have a football game another week, a basketball game. Well, they wanted to identify and brand that team to the stadium. So they made these little quick slip-ons where they stretch fabric and they slip it on the back of the chair and they take it off at the end of the game and then move on to the next team. They're also using it for fencing. So you can both brand the event and make it look a little more pleasant for the customer when he's coming to see the event, not just looking at a metal gate. So sporting events really lead to a lot of different opportunities depending on what element you want to drive after. I mentioned museums earlier. Museums are also found fabric to be very beneficial, especially when they're changing out displays, because museums are constantly bringing in a new exhibit. When that exhibit comes in, they want to quickly be able to change their signage, change their graphics, and make it look interesting. Again, fabric is perfect for that. Home decor is another market that's actually now starting to develop very nicely in fabric. Pillows, curtains, flooring. You can dice up flooring. I mean, it's not something that we make, but I know plenty of companies that basically have flooring materials you can run directly onto a printer, onto the EFI printer, for example. And then the one on the bottom right-hand corner here, I thought that was interesting because I have a customer that does graphics for garages. And that's the first time I've seen it done in a home type environment, where basically instead of having this ugly garage, you have a nice car, you want to put it in your garage, and you don't want to put up new sheetrock to cover up all the pipes. You can take a graphic SEG, put it on the wall, and now you have a nice looking garage to show off your car. And you can see they even put the graphic around the door frame. I mean, this is a whole different type of opportunity, I think, for print shops. I mean, for some of you folks that may be as old as I am, think back in the 60s where you have theme walls in your home, a landscape or a waterfall. They were ugly as heck because it was wallpaper and the graphics were horrible back then. Now you can actually have a theme room. Somebody that's a big football fan wants to have his cave where he puts up a graphic of his favorite team. You can decorate the whole wall that way. A kid's room. I mean, I think the opportunities in home decor and in home environments are huge. And especially from a margin perspective, these people are willing to pay for it. Now, the other thing that's really coming up is green. A few years back, when I was offering green solutions, it was rejected. We didn't care about it. Folks didn't take much time to think about it. They just wanted to get the best price for the product. Well, now when you're getting statements like the top one here, that 92 million tons of waste is created each year, and it's equivalent to one full rubber truckload of clothes ends up in landfills each second. Well, it's getting attention, and I can tell you from the last trade show that we just attended, that was the biggest thing on the minds of a lot of my clients. In the retail sector, they're now demanding it. My clients that print for the Apples and the Targets and Home Depots of the world are now demanding that we come up with fabrics that are recyclable and made from recycled content, partly because their waste costs are going up. So now it's justifying for them to pay a little bit more. Recycling content costs have come down. And it's also a very important topic for the next generation of consumers. Our youth are taking that very seriously, and they want to basically be good stewards to our environment. Large companies, as I mentioned, large companies are requiring it. And I can tell you it's making us better. Now, fabric can be recycled. We actually have found a couple of partners that will recycle fabric. You've heard about the need for PET, which is polyester. and they're not taking advantage of fabric. And some of these recyclers are learning that it's a very valuable resource for them if they can get it back and do it properly. In the past, it was done through a mechanical method. Mechanical recycling is chopping up the product, melting it back down, and turning it into new material for polyester. Well, that wasn't really conducive for fabric. Chemical recycling, and again, I can go into details on this, but when you hear the word chemical recycling, the ones that can do chemical recycling can actually take fabric and turn it back into either new fabric or to other products that are requiring PET.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go through this a little, if you can go through this a little quick, and from
Yeah,
first, we're going to get to Tiffany and actually show some of this on the
exactly.
yeah, perfect.
Let me just get to the next slide. For some
Yeah.
reason, I'm not getting to the next slide.
I can go through, but it's, I mean, again, one of the reasons we wanted to walk through these, a couple things are very exciting about soft signage is that the market's big and growing. It's different. There's a lot of things that are out there, and this, especially as we get into this recycle component, this is also a bigger plus for why this market is growing, right? So it's lots of applications, lots of opportunity, lots of materials that we can go through. And there's a benefit for the environment on top of that. So it's a great story all around.
I'll finish this up quickly.
Yeah.
Again, you can now make fabric into fabric, which is really what the goal is, and that's one of our recycling partners is doing.
Yeah.
There's also a degradable fabric. Basically, it's a biodegradable fabric, polyester, and you're going to see that today in the demo. It's a fabric that we produce that they're going to show that it prints as well, and you actually indistinguishable between non-degradable fabric. It's a silo process. If you guys want to look that up, it's already being done in apparel. It's a great process, and it allows us to put things into an environment where it's going to degrade down and not just come into little chips. It's going to be floating around the ocean and getting into our water supply. The other thing that's innovative is, when you're recycling fabric, in the past you used basically an SCG made out of PVC or silicon. Well, that does not recycle. You had to be removed, and stores do not want to remove the keter from the fabric. Well, we came up with a polyester keter, which is really getting a lot of attention because now you can recycle the keter and the fabric together. And what folks don't realize, the keter is about 40% of the weight of the actual post that you're putting up. So that's a lot of product that in the past we had to take off and put into a landfill. And then again, and I'll just make one other point, not all fabric's made the same way. This is my one little, I guess, advertisement for Aberdeen.
Sure.
Our fabric is made very differently than anyone else in the industry. We use 90% less water. We have no wastewater. We use less energy. We make everything in the United States. It's basically not getting all the CO2s from overseas shipping. Our energy is coming from clearing glass and gas. And Aberdeen is exceeding the requirements of the Clean Smokestack Act, which means that basically there's virtually no pollutants coming out of our smokestack as we make fabric. I would challenge any other mill in the world right now to do what we're doing because basically they're using a lot of water and a lot of dirty energy. Again, that's who we are at Aberdeen. Any questions you have for me, really, I welcome them. You can ask me privately. But I think you'll see from my presentation, both from the green aspect and also the diversity of the market, it's much larger than most folks realize. And what I would encourage you is to seek out those opportunities because it doesn't help us to follow each other and say, hey, everyone's doing trade shows, let's do trade shows. Go into markets that are more profitable, be the innovator. And I think with direct printers, like what the EFIs can do, direct printers make it easy for you to do it.
That's right, and that's exactly right, and that's why we want to start with this talking about. And Ken, thanks for your time. Tiffany, I've made you presenter, so we'll go ahead switch it over to you. There's a lot of material to cover in a short period of time, and to me, what was most exciting about that, and what were the takeaways we're trying to give, is there's a lot of opportunity. The fabrics are there, the customers are there, but also the opportunity is there because we've made it easier to do, right? More productive, and we're going to talk about that with some of the equipment. I'm going to Tiffany, I'm going to move you to the stage, and I'm going to let me see. I'm going to turn off your video for now. And
just lock it so it doesn't bounce around.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. What is it? Okay. go ahead and start. I'm gonna, there we go. Okay, perfect.
All right.
You should be able to.
Well, thank you, Ken. That was a great presentation, and you're absolutely right. Some awesome, awesome reasons to go into a water-based dye sublimation workflow. Certainly good for the environment, but also good for the end users' wallets, right? It's very, very, very low TCO. Especially with EFI, namely because it's really a holistic approach of not just the printer and the hardware, but the water-based inks are an EFI product, EFI direct product. So what that means is that we have a very heavy pigment load with less water carrier. So we're able to give you more color, more density, more saturation with having to outgas less of that water carrier. So in these modes, we can be printing, 1,500, 1,700 square feet per hour and giving you a really good, rich product and still outgassing all of that water carrier at those speeds because we're using less water and more pigment. So as Dan mentioned, we have the recycled product on board. Greg, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're printing?
Yeah, so this is that CeeLo product that Ken had mentioned earlier that does contain biodegradable yarns. So, in the event when this fabric does go into a landfill, it's not going to sit there for years and years and years and degrade. So that is a new product, from Aberdeen, and a new type of product for the industry in and of itself.
So great fabric on a really great printing product. So what we have here on the FabriVU 340i Plus, you see a magnetic linear drive driving that carriage. So we're getting very, very precise drop placement, again, at those higher rates of speed. And you can also see that the colors in the immediate print zone look a little bit flat. That's because they have not been sublimated in yet. So what we're doing with those Kyocera print heads is we're firing a 4 picoliter drop. And in the new Plus version, we went ahead and we doubled up on that resolution by doubling up on our print heads. So now inline backlights and inline flag applications are getting really, really great, dense, rich color. Again, and allowing you to do that process inline, which historically would have to be an offline process. As the prints are going through, Greg, can we open up that door so we can talk about some of the EFI technology? So we're going to print to the surface of the material using a small amount of heat so that it sets that dot. And then the way that we're extracting, the way that EFI is extracting is vastly different than some of our competitive equipment. Greg, can you talk us through what's different about our process?
Sure. So several of our competitors' products are taking the off gas from the sublimation, and it's being extracted from their presses, usually by a fan system, either set in the center or actually set on one end of the press. That actually kind of pulls all that pigment and gas product in one direction. And what EFI has found is when that's done, sometimes there's a ghosting effect where you'll have a softened edge that'll flow towards where that extraction's taking place. So the way EFI approached this situation was we've created a fully chambered manifold. So now that the heat platen is engaged and we're sublimating in this zone here, all our off gas is coming through this chambered manifold and being pulled directly off the front of the chute. So all that residual gas is being pulled straight off the front of the sheet without any movement, and then being extracted out chamber in the top of the manifold. So that is a feature unique to this and it's a feature and a big plus in technology from EFI.
So in regards to edge fidelity, small font cascades, if for whatever reason you need to do barcoding, things like that, you don't have any issue with those void spaces with the EFI product. So that's been a real differentiator for us. I'm going to go ahead and switch the cameras around so you can see some prints that I have to show you how we can maintain that reverse type and that void space on some pre-printed samples.
And Tiffany, all of
So-
those things that we talk about are really from our experience. We got, hundreds of printers in the market, hundreds of customers using this in that variety of applications. We really just need to make sure that our printer can be as productive and as versatile as possible in the market, right? So everything's high quality, you can have high speed, but really maximize the use of that material. Is that kind of where we're position it?
Yeah, absolutely. So maximize the use of material, but also, with materials supply shortages, labor supply shortages, you want to be able to do as much in a single step process as possible. So being able to print in line and have a finished product coming out the front and able to go right over to, sewing or whatever the next step may be, as quickly and efficiently as possible is really, really critical. And so what you can see here, we've got a really, really heavy black, but a bunch of reverse type as well. And it might be difficult to see on camera, but even that register mark is maybe an eighth of an inch wide, and it is holding perfectly fine in that build black. And again, that's using the technology that Greg was just explaining of how we're pulling that outgas or that byproduct away from the material and then out, so that we're not, running that outgas across the surface of our print. So again, in line, able to achieve these rich colors, that dense black, but also keeping our negative space nice and clean.
Excellent.
One comment
Now,
I'll
Greg.
make it. I'm sorry. I was going to make one thing backing up on this, Tiffany. I see a lot of printers out there, and that's where I really give you guys a lot of credit, because ghosting and crocking has been a problem with direct printers in the past, and you guys have actually mastered getting rid of both, the way you bent that system out. Because ghosting and crocking has always been a problem since 2007, and folks have dealt with it, and you guys have actually corrected that, and I give you a lot of credit for it.
Thank you. We do appreciate that. Like I said, I mean, this product, based off of that Reggiani super high speed, super high quality textile, we have a really great solid foundation. It's a very, very heavy duty printer, but is also a very simple printer to get on your floor, build out some recipes for the fabrics that you're using and get into this market space very quickly and easily. Now, as I mentioned, the prints that you see being printed at the top where the carriages, again, look a little bit flat. And then once they come out and go through that sublimation process, you can see they're really great, vibrant colors, but also Greg has font cascades, small type, to really showcase that effectiveness of being able to inline, sublimate, and still successfully remove that outgas byproduct.
And one other thing I would add is when Ken mentioned crocking or rub off on our product, one of the innovations of the FabriVU Plus platform is that the heater has been redesigned. So on our previous edition of our heater, we had basically one temperature sensor set in the center of the press. We had a different lamp setup with using IR lamps to heat that platen. Our engineers went and redesigned this with micro heat resistors, basically metal panels that are spring loaded with a full array on either far end of this heat platen with an array in the center. That allows us to get very quickly heated up, a great heat dispersion from edge to edge right across that platform, and in turn allows us to get that even heat from edge to edge on a full width print of a solid tint without any crocking, without any color fluctuation. It's been a very big improvement to the FabriVU Plus platform.
And Greg, we had a customer that really put us up to the test for that. Do you want to maybe talk about what that looked like and what we had to do for this one particular customer?
Sure. So that's on our previous edition press, and wanted to ensure that they were able to print a long run of fabric, one solid tint. They were very concerned that they'd maintain color consistency over a long period of runtime. And so what we did was we ran a large royal blue patch from edge to edge on the fabric. We probably ran more than 50 or 60 feet, and we took readings from the center and then towards the edge, probably about 1.5 feet in between, right across. And we actually saw a delta shift of color. I would say it was about no more than 1.4, 1.3. It was a very slim margin, and that was on our old press. I've run a small test of this on the new press, and I'm getting a delta that's not varying past 1.2 at this point. So not perceptible by the eye at all for a color shift.
Exactly. And a lot of that technology is the heat technology. A lot of that is, you know, how we're maintaining consistency in our pigment, and then how we're able to really fine tune the inks being jetted through that Kyocera print head. So super, super, super successful application. Greg, are there, oh, go ahead. Was there a question?
No, I was just going to bring up that just that idea of really having that you know, high quality. Some of the applications we talked about when, you know, museums, or then you've got some others that are backlit for you know, backlit, so it can handle all of that high quality, high product, you know, need applications. But it can also do some of the simpler stuff, right? You got different modes for all of that, so the versatility of the machine can handle that variety of applications that Ken talked about, from the highest quality with most discerning eye to things that you just need to get a lot of production out. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to switch the cameras now and show you some examples of our backlit printing. This is our worldwide marketing manager's favorite part of these demos is this backlit. The backlits are, like I said, absolutely stunning. And historically, the challenge was how do we, you know, outgas enough of the water carrier and things of that nature, so that you don't have that crocking that Ken and Dan were talking about. You maintain a great edge fidelity with a deep, deep, deep black, like you see here, while maintaining all of that quality, that high definition quality that everybody has come to expect. That historically had to be an offline sublimation process, just because there was no way to get this much ink coverage properly sublimated out, properly outgassed without losing any of that image quality. You can see on this fabric, it's absolutely stunning.
Actually, in the past, Tiffany, it had to be done transfer. You actually have matched what you can do transfer, which is remarkable.
Yeah, being able to do it inline again allows you to be able to keep it a one-step process, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't have to get other people involved. It's one operator that's running that thing, and it's a finished product, or, you know, print finished product at the end with extra, you know, without extra work.
Exactly. So Greg, do you want to talk about maybe some of the applications that you've been successful with? You know, we've got a customer in-house today actually on the FabriVU running some blackback products, you know, a ton of frontlit, a ton of backlit, but what are some of the more interesting, unique things that you've seen come through recently?
So in the past, we've actually run on gaming felt, and I did hear Ken mention that during his presentation. So that was a surprising product. There's a big trend going on in acoustic products that, you know, Ken once again did mention, and I'm seeing several of the vendors come out with acoustic dampening products, you know, that maybe people didn't think of, or were just priced too high for most customers before. Now all these options are becoming accessible, you know, more so than your typical signage. And that's the one big key thing that I did learn after joining EFI is that it is not just about signage products here. There's all sorts of applications that come right outside the box that you would have never thought of, and that there are markets there that are completely untapped at this point.
Yeah, and to piggyback onto that, jumping back into Ken's presentation, he is a great provider to get you into these different types of applications. It's not just soft signage, like he said, be the innovator. Your machine is only as creative and out of the box as your operators or as your business managers are. So, use people like Ken and the EFI team and staff to help you get creative on what these applications possibilities really are.
Yeah, the market is bigger than you think. There's a lot of profitable products. I love, Ken, when you talked about things like weddings or small short-term events where there are high premium products that are out there. The local sporting events. Everybody thinks I have to do the whole stadium, but how about the local sporting events?
Right.
The market for what we call soft signage is bigger than you think, and it's everywhere you look. And that's really, I think, our message out there is really, as you're looking for the customers, they're everywhere. You could be as innovative and as forward thinking as you want to be as a provider, and your customers are that way as well, so they'll love you for it, right? So that type of idea, how do you build something together? So again, as you're looking at soft signs, and then from our perspective on the equipment, we just need to make sure that our equipment is as versatile as possible. So deep, highly, backlit, high quality, but also extremely productive. I think, I don't know the specs, but it can go 1,700 square feet. You can, the specs. I don't know them, but I know it's fast.
I would say or faster.
Yeah,
1776 is actually our it's a slower high quality mode, to be brutally honest. So 1776 is a really quick mode. We've never had an issue with speed on the FabriVU, but if you need to go faster, you certainly can.
So really the production's there, the versatility's there, the single step, we've taken all the learnings from our textile, 75 years in the textile space, and built it into the equipment side. And then all of our learnings from our roll to roll, how do we make these equipments efficient so that it's a single operator, you don't have to spend a lot of time. And as Tiffany mentioned, and we've got partners like Ken and others that can really help with applications and help you think about that as out there. So as the market comes in, or as you're thinking about it, it's a great market, and it's only going to be growing. Again, more than just events, more than just signage or flags. It's really big. It's as big as you want it to be from that perspective. So
with the versatility of the FabriVU, we also, sorry, Dan, real quick, have the capability to answer to all three different types of dye sublimation processes, right? So what we showed today was printing and sublimating inline directly to the fabric. If you run into a situation where, for whatever reason, you need to calendar offline, you can print, turn the heat down, just set that dot, and then take that process offline. Or if you have a particularly stretchy product that you want to do, maybe a spandex or something like my dress, in that situation, you would print to transfer paper and take the entire process offline. The FabriVU allows you to do all three of those scenarios with a 15 or 20 minute warm up or cool down process.
Very easily.
Exactly. So that versatility of the market space is also supported on the FabriVU right out of the gate. So you really have no limitations when you're looking at the EFI product.
Well, actually, I'll add one more to you. That paper that you can print on, you can actually transfer. Again, it's not fabric, but you can transfer onto hot substrates like corian,
exactly.
countertops. So it gives you that versatility.
Yeah,
we
we've
want
got a lot of customers.
Just kidding.
Yeah, of course. Use the fabric. But in the instance that you come across an opportunity, you don't necessarily have to. You can have, different. We've seen some aluminum signage and things like that get sublimated in an off transfer solution.
Yeah, that's excellent. So with that, that's our prepared remarks for today. From this, we want to open it to questions that come in. One of the questions, and you already answered it, Tiffany, was do I have to use the calendar? Can I do something else? Other processes. So we actually do have a version, and Tom, we can maybe even talk about it. We do. If you have an offline calendar already and you're adding a FabriVU to your business, you can have a version of the printer that does not have the calendar involved in it. So that's it. There is a 340 versus a 340i available that's out there, but that would mean you have other equipment. The 340i is really the one that most of our customers are going for now. That is available as well. Is there another reason you would have a 340 versus a 340i? I guess is a question. anything else that you want to
It
add?
really just depends on your workflow, right? So we just talked about, if you already have the calendar. Another thing is if you're a job shop, right? So if you're doing, one of this and two of that, five of that, 10 of this, and you've got a wide variety of different types of materials that you want to offer your customer base. Again, we call it more of a job house or job shop scenario. Then that sometimes lends itself better as a better solution to do an offline calendarization. So you're not having to load up and change out the materials on the entire press. You basically print to the transfer paper, as much work as you have for the day, and then you can do small short runs on the offline calendar. And then the other reason would be if you have again, like I said, a particularly stretchy material outside of our stretch tolerances or something that doesn't have the appropriate polyester coatings, that would be an offline scenario. But with the eye, if you have, say, a handful of products and you're a large run, high production house, doing it inline is 100% more efficient than an offline scenario in that type of job house.
Okay, so versatility in solutions as well, depending on what you're at. So that's something we could walk through. Another question that came in is, we talked about recycling old print fabrics. Is how do they know they're actually getting recycled? Came in. Ken, you and I talked about this
Right.
earlier, but maybe you can talk about that. So there's two things about the recycle. First of all, it has to be recyclable to start. Like you have to have the ability to recycle. If you don't start with that, the recycling doesn't come into play. So we start with that, but how it actually gets recycled, there's plenty of places that do it. And maybe Ken, you can talk about that.
Well, on the fabric recycling, actually, there's not as many to do it, but the ones that do it will give you certification and it has been recycled. And again, there's different types of recycling. I mean, you are correct when you said there's many, but some of it's repurposing. You want to be careful of repurposing companies. They take fabric and they send it over to China and they cut it up and make it into other products. And if you're dealing with a company like Nike, for example, they don't necessarily want their logo put onto a product that's not theirs, right? So recycling is the key, and it's expanding with the chemical recycling process. Again, it's a much more complicated question. I can answer offline because it would take 2 hours to do. But the companies that are now doing it will send certifications to vendors. Like I'll bring up Target because Target wants to recycle all their displays, and they're getting it certified from the recycler that it's being done and actually how many yards are going in. And the goal eventually is that product that's coming off their walls are going to be made into new yarn because the company that's doing that recycling is going to produce yarn out of the byproduct.
Excellent. So again, back to the people asking, and if you're thinking about it, it depends on what your customer needs as well. We can, there's certification as you talked about for recycling. I do like the idea, the repurpose or reuse. Really, a lot of it is how can I use that same fabric over again, either wash it, put it back, or I can maybe even do other things with it.
Exactly.
So that's all possible. That's not possible with vinyl and some other materials, right? So
let me just say one other thing to recycling. For small companies that are just trying to recycle one banner, it may not be as cost effective because it still has to be sent to the recycler. It really works well for large opportunities, which is why the biodegradable fabric comes into play because it still allows that client to say, hey, I want to be green. I don't want to spend the money to send this back to a recycler. I can throw it into a trash. Now, again, the landfill has to have a way to, compost. Some landfills don't. So I want to preface that too, but it still allows the fabric to degrade like cottonwood. I mean, basically that's what's happening now. Polyester will degrade the same way cotton would in a landfill, unlike in the past where polyester would take 200 years before it would actually break down.
Yeah. All right. Good. Any other questions or thoughts or any comments from anybody else on there? Again, the purpose of what we wanted to talk about today is big market growing, pretty diverse, right? So that the applications that we're seeing, the one that struck me, the two things that Ken, you talked about, and we talked yesterday, the local sports, I see that as being a sports parent. I see that all the time now too. Things like, and then seat covers, what we had with our customer in Australia, the Perth, and so things that are bigger than just the wrapping of the stadiums, right? The other things that get involved makes it a big market, right? So looking for those markets, if you're out there, they're out there, or you can create them. The gas station pumps or the like, where you're covering up things, making it easy for somebody that's doing it, makes that market big and viable. So.
Well, then I'll just add this. I mean, it's high margin.
Yeah.
Folks want to make more. I mean, if you're just setting up a business to chase what your competitors are doing, you're going to be competing and you're also going to be selling it at a low cost. You know, again, so many different areas of fabric's growing into, mainly because of the ease of a direct printer.
Yep.
I mean, that's really the key. That's what blew up the industry in 2007. Direct printers allowed folks to get into the market quickly and do trade shows. And that's what's happening now with this, you know, technology.
So good. Any other comments or questions from? I don't see any questions coming in from the anybody online. I know we've got customers waiting, Tiffany. They're probably waiting for you there. The nice thing about Fabric, we celebrated our 300th sale just at Printing United last month now. Geez, last month. But it's definitely growing, and there's more customers getting in. And as Ken said, not just chasing what's out there, but really expanding the market. And that's what we'd encourage you guys to think about doing. We're happy to help talk about that. If you have those opportunities or questions or things come in, happy to get involved with the EFI or any EFI distributor to talk through that, and happy to walk through all of the options available from EFI that we have as well.
And the market has certainly been keeping Greg and I on our toes for sure. So
Right.
if we can help with anything, certainly reach out, and we're happy to work through some samples, or if you need a one-on-one demonstration, want to see something a little bit more in depth, we're certainly here for you as well.
Perfect. With that, I don't see any other questions. I think we can end a couple minutes early if that's okay. Everybody that joined today, we appreciate your time. And again, we've got this recorded. We'll send this out. Well, thanks all. We'll go ahead and end the session.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.